I have to say, when I first walked in, I was just so impressed.
It's the reaction we get from everybody. It is just true amazement and awe.
Welcome into Local Roots. I'm Alicia Barnes, and today we are talking about the Carolina Theater. It is up and running right now, recently opened up in the last year. And I want to bring in my guest right now, Dr. Tom Hanchett, to talk all about the history of the Carolina Theater. I mean, it's impressive. When I first walked in, you can be able to just see all the different changes, but there's really a backstory to the Carolina Theater.
It is a gem. It is one of the few grand theaters that's still around in this part of the South. I think you'd have to go to Atlanta to the Fox Theater to see something that was grander. Back in the 20s, when motion pictures were a new thing, these grand atmospheric theaters, they called them atmospheric theaters, were the jewel of a city. And this one was a jewel, and then it kind of wasn't, because as you got into the 1960s and 70s, the center city gave way to the shopping mall. And when I came to Charlotte in the 1980s, it was a dump. It was a real bad shape, and never thought it would come back again. And Foundation of the Carolinas put a whole lot of love over a number of years into taking that plaster ornament that you see there on the screen and bringing it back to life.
Let's talk about the period of history and who was allowed in this theater when it first opened and when it was in its heyday.
That is a powerful story. The 1920s are the depths of Jim Crow, as they called it, putting a happy face on racial segregation. And when I first started to talk, we recreated a little piece of that theater in the old Levine Museum of the New South. And I would talk to people, Black people, white people, old people, young people, and Black people told me a story that surprised me. I expected that in segregation, there would have been a black balcony or something like that. At the Carolina Theater, there wasn't. It was just for white people. And people remembered having to go to the Gem in Kannapolis, which had a black balcony. If they wanted to see first-run films. There were black movie theaters around Charlotte, the Grand out on Beatties Ford Road, but they showed second run and kind of B movies rather than the grand movie that was everybody was talking about. And so that segregation remained, as far as we know, until, I think, 1963. I would love to know someone went to the Carolina Theater when it opened up to Black people. What happened in 63 was an amazing thing in Charlotte history. People need to know more about this. When some of the civil rights leaders talked with Mayor Stan Brookshire Freeway, and said, we need to get ahead of this desegregation thing that's going on. And Brookshire was a business person. He looked at the TV, and Birmingham was going to pieces over desegregation, and Brookshire called up his friends at the Chamber of Commerce, said, all white men, said, you know somebody in the black community, go out. We're going to desegregate the restaurants. We're going to desegregate the movie theaters. And that was in the last week or so of May in 1963.
When you look at the period of history of where it was and where it is today, kind of what stands out to you?
Tremendous change in the center city of Charlotte. There was not much going on when I came here in 1981, and it looked like there never would be. And everybody wanted to go to Eastland Mall. Well, today, Eastland Mall is gone. Most of the big shopping centers in Charlotte, South Park is still there, and a couple others are still hanging on. But this notion that we can come together in the center of our city is one of the things that gives me great hope as we move from the past into the future. As a historian, there were times when we got along less well, certainly in that way. Coming downtown now is really something, or uptown, call it whatever you want. There are restaurants, there are art galleries, there is a kind of strolling culture in the evenings where people enjoy the restaurants and enjoy the sense that you're with your neighbor.
I got to ask you this since you're here, Dr. Hanchett. So, how did uptown versus downtown? Why don't we just call it downtown?
Well, initially, Uptown is older. The name Uptown refers to the geography of Tryon Street, which runs along a hilltop,
Okay.
a little short hilltop by today's standards, but it goes back to the Native American people here. The great trading path came up from South Carolina and Georgia up through Charlotte, up to Richmond, Virginia, and it ran along the ridge line, what's now Tryon Street. And so when you came to the center city, you
Came
literally
uptown.
go up. You still do today. And but hey, we're welcoming. There are a lot of people here who are newcomers. They're from places where they call that place downtown.
Right.
So just bring some money and come
Do you
on.
think we're ever going to call it downtown?
People do call it downtown. They
Okay.
call it the center city. Just come visit.
Yeah.
Nice place.
Yes. All right. So much more to come about the Carolina Theater. We're going to actually take you behind the scenes and what it looked like as they were building the Carolina Theater as to what you see today. Stay close. Welcome back into Local Roots. I'm Alicia Barnes, and we're going to be talking about the Carolina Theater as we continue this conversation. Now, we took you and talked to you about the memories of the Carolina Theater. Now we're going to dive into what you're actually seeing. Let me introduce you to our guest today. We have Dr. Tom Hanchett from History South. Thank you so much for being on with us as always. And we also have a special guest today, too, Jared Meisner, and he is with the Carolina Theater. You're the communications director. And we're so happy that you're here with us today to kind of give us that inside scoop about the theater.
Yeah.
I have to say, when I first walked in, I was just so impressed.
It's the reaction we get from everybody. It is just true amazement and awe, especially from a building that has been sitting vacant for 50 years. To finally walk in again, I never get tired of seeing people's reaction.
Dr. Hanchett, take us through the history as to what this means. We're looking here as to what we're seeing present day. I mean, just the lighting of it when you walk in is incredible. But look, this is inside the theater, what people can now experience.
When I first saw the theater, it was in the 1980s, and it had been abandoned since the Bruce Lee film that was the last thing to show in 1978, and it continued to be abandoned until Foundation for the Carolinas took it over and brought it back to life. It's been just remarkable.
I know you moved here in the 80s, correct? And for you to be able to see that and then you see what it looks like now, I mean, kind of take me through that a little bit.
Well, in the 80s, Uptown Charlotte was not a particularly desirable place to be. People thought that the shopping mall was a lot more fun. And so Charlotte used to have a bunch of downtown theaters. They had all gone away. And the Carolina Theater was probably the grandest of them because it was part of the Paramount movie chain. At that time, before antitrust regulations, the movie companies owned their theaters and supplied them with product. So this was a grand knock your socks off experience where you paid your 5 cents or 25 cents or whatever it was to go to the movie,
Right.
but you also got to go to Venice and Milan and the interior egaws,
Right.
that's a technical term, are pretty darn amazing.
What history do people need to know as they now say, you know what, I hear that the Carolina Theater is open, but I hear that this comes kind of with a lot that came with it?
Well, it opened originally in, I think, 1927, and that was the point of the talkies were coming in. Previously, there had been silent films, and the movie chains were competing with each other. Paramount had a whole subsidiary called Publix that operated a lot of these theaters. It was a grand time. The Busby Berkeley musicals and the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and all of that, the first Mickey Mouse cartoons, all of those happened within just a few years in the mid-20s, which is almost 100 years ago.
It's just incredible. Jared, you coming in and seeing what they've now created, what have you learned that you want people to really know about what we're seeing here? I mean, this is beautiful. I mean, it's just absolutely breathtaking.
I mean, the Carolina Theater, like Dr. Hancher just said, almost 100 years old. It's been a cultural jewel in the Queen City's crown for nearly a century. And so we've been gone for 47 years. So we're having people from past generations, rediscover us and come back. We showed The Sound of Music again, this 2 sold out showings.
You
Because
Diana Ross.
we had Diana Ross too. I mean, so it's fun to see people come for very new things and very, very old things like The Sound of Music, which we showed in 1964 and 65 to more than 400,000 people at the time. And so it's really fun to see those older generations come back and then introduce new generations. That's sort of, I love it. I can't get enough of that.
Now, you guys have just been open now for 6 months.
Yes, we opened in March, so it's been almost a year. So it's been about 8 months.
Since we've been open.
Yeah.
And when you look to see what you're picking and what's coming here to Charlotte, it's very diverse.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
It's really interesting. It's a hard part of my job and a great part of my job because when someone asks, what do you do at the Carolina Theater? It's, well, we do everything. We have live music, we have comedians, we have movies. And our theater sits in that very sweet spot where we have 906 seats. So it's smaller than some of the bigger theaters in Charlotte like Knight or the Belk, but it's bigger than some of the more intimate theaters. So we can get that range of performers and artists, and we can pack a movie house, for a classic movie as well.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
We like it.
Yes. Dr. Hinge, I have to ask you, though, I mean, when you walk in and you see what's done today, were you impressed?
Yes. And I have a piece of that history where usually I write about stuff and talk about stuff, but in the 80s, when the Carolina Theater looked like it was going to be torn down, I was working for the Historic Landmarks. And they wanted to designate something there as an official historic landmark. And at that point, there was a sort of Spanish Revival stucco piece that was at the corner that was in very, very bad shape. And then there was the formal entrance, which I think is stone. It is a wonderful piece of neoclassical architecture. And so we designated just that piece.
Oh, wow.
And sure enough, the bulldozers came not that long later, took down all of the front of the building and kept those pieces. And what you see there is not exactly in the original spot. It used to be out at the curb, but where there's a marquee that says Carolina Theater, stone building behind that is part of that saving of a little piece of Charlotte.
Wow. I know we've spoken in the past about how Charlotte loves to tear things down and build things back up. In that area, were you surprised at all the money that went into making this what we're seeing today?
Foundation for the Carolinas really did it right. And I won't even quote the amount of money that went into it.
Jared, I know you know that.
I do know that.
You feel so comfortable in there. I'm a kind of guy, you're looking at my formal attire. This is all of it right now. And I go to the Carolina Theater and I don't feel like I need to wear this. I feel like I'm being welcomed.
What I think is really interesting is when you walk around, you see portraits of people who have helped make this vision a reality. I even took pictures because I wanted to be able to look up the names and look up, who all helped with kind of make it what it is today. First, tell us the price tag, Jared.
So it's approaching $100 million.
Wow.
But that restoration was in earnest. Probably it took 12 years from 2012, 2013 to 2025. And you have to remember there was a pandemic in the middle of that, which increased labor costs, which delayed it, which increased the price of lumber, all of these things. But yeah, we were very lucky, as you said, to have a whole host of donors, private, public, that helped restore this theater.
All right, so we know that you want to be able to go inside what's behind what you're seeing that's just gorgeous and beautiful. We're going to do that in our next segment. We're going to take a little break right here. We'll be right back with Local Roots. Welcome back to Local Roots. We're talking about the Carolina Theater today, and we're going to take you inside what's behind all this just a gorgeous, beautiful theater that you see when you walk in. Jared, first kind of talk to us about what has been saved. And we're looking at here, I mean, it was probably like...
It was a mess.
It was literal rubble.
Right.
Was literal rubble. So all of the bones of the theater are original. So the building was there. And then as Dr. Hanchett said, the facade is original as well. So we found it underneath the stage at about 100 pieces because it had been marked as a historic landmark. And so we painstakingly recreated that facade. As Dr. Hanchett also said, we moved it inside to protect from weathering and pedestrians. But the stairs are all original, and when you go on the stairs, you can tell that they are from a different era. They are much
Really?
steeper.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So they are very, very, very different than normal stairs, I would say. But all of the bones, and as Dr. Hanchett said, the aesthetics of the theater, when you go to the Carolina Theater, we tried to match the aesthetics of the interior as closely as we could. We only have black and white photos, of course, of the inside. But the aesthetic is still the same sort of Tuscan Mediterranean vibe, because that was what you experienced when you went to the theater in 1927. It was an experience.
Right.
So we tried to match that exactly, and we used a historical preservation or restoration society to help with that. But again, the bones are all there.
Dr. Hanchett, when you see these pictures here, I mean, I think everybody knew this was a mess at one point, especially you just walked by there or drove by there, because it took a while to get to where we are
I'm
today.
tearing up. This is really special. The interior is not stone; it is plaster, and for that to make it through Cinerama. At one point, they had an extra wide screen for Cinerama, and this is in the '60s, I guess. And so they hammered away at some of the plaster, and the Foundation for the Carolinas has put it back, and it's just breathtaking. And there are big murals that are up above you that look like the countryside in northern Italy, I guess. And the parts of those were there, but I understand you had to redo them on acoustical.
They are
screen.
They are printed on acoustic fabrics, which I have learned for the first time since I came to the Carolina Theater was a thing. But instead of painting them on the walls again as they had been, we then sort of put them up on acoustic fabric. So they look like they're painted, but they're honestly on this very, very, very thin fabric that holds the building.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The seats, some of them are theater seats, some of them are couches.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I like that. and there's it's just a very thoughtful renovation and very high tech as well. When you go in, you have to pick the right show, because they don't do this all the time, but they have a special computer program that animates all of the details. All of the trim comes to life and starts bouncing around, and flowers grow out of it. And it's called computer mapping. And I've seen it in some big cities, not in a theater setting. And it is remarkable.
We're one of the only theaters in the country that has that projection mapping capability. So as Dr. Hanchett was saying, when you come see a movie or anything that we're putting on that we control that, previews, things like that, we will have that projection mapping all over 360 degrees almost. And it does
It's
show.
trippy.
It shows the walls crumbling. It shows, vegetation growing on the walls, because that's the history of the theater. There's so many reasons the theater shouldn't be there, or could have been something else, where something else intervened and happened.
Right.
So it's a remarkable thing that the theater is still there.
So I live in Fort Mill, South Carolina. A lot of times people who live like in Matthews or Fort Mill or kind of the outliers of Charlotte, they don't come in for to be able to enjoy a night. When I saw the Carolina Theater, I even said to you, wow, this is something that everybody needs to put on their bucket list. But it's not just for adults.
No.
I mean, this is for kids too.
Absolutely.
Now, do the kids need to be dressed up?
Well, it depends on the show. We usually encourage costumes if it's applicable. So any kind of Christmas show that we have this month, we're absolutely encouraging costumes. We had a Halloween movie series. We absolutely encourage costumes.
Right.
Star Wars. So.
Because you also had, what's the big one? You're able to throw rice.
We had Rocky Horror Picture Show, and those costumes were remarkable.
Yes.
Remarkable. The crowd was in finest form that evening.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys going to do that next year?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So that's going to be a yearly
Absolutely.
thing. Some things.
And that's the beauty right now of us having our first years. We get to see what works and what doesn't. And Rocky Horror Picture Show certainly will become an annual thing.
Anything that, as we close out the show right now, that you want people to leave with about the Carolina Theater?
When I came in the early 1980s, Uptown Charlotte had very little going for it. You famously could not buy a Snickers bar after 5 o'clock. Now there's all sorts of stuff. So, plan on going and eating a wonderful Southern dinner at Mertz, or go to the food court at Monarch Market, or go to one of the many upscale restaurants that are there now. And leave yourself some time to stroll before dinner and after dinner, and then make your way to the Carolina Theater.
It's gorgeous. And also let everybody know your website, please, with History South.
www.historysouth.org has lots of Charlotte history on it.
And Jared, if you could let everybody know where they can be able to get more information about the Carolina Theater.
Absolutely. It's always at thecarolina.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter right at the top there, and you'll get to know what's the first thing coming up next. So, thecarolina.com.
It's something you have to see. Dr. Hanchett, Jared, thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much for watching Local Roots.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.